Okay, picture this. Global trade, completely redrawn. Alliances, shifting under our feet. And economic certainties, gone. What if a second Trump term actually brings that kind of turbulence? And maybe more importantly, how is the UK actually set up to handle those waves? So that's what we're doing today. We're diving deep into a whole stack of sources, articles, some really detailed research, expert takes to basically pull out the key info for you. Think of it as, well, your shortcut to getting properly informed on this. It's complex, it's moving fast, and we want to give you clarity without, grounding you in detail.
Precisely. And as we look at that history, the real value for you, our listener, isn't just knowing the specific policies, but really getting the strategic thinking behind it all. That's what could reshape the whole transatlantic relationship. We'll peel back those layers, look at the history, what a second Trump term could mean for Britain trade, economy, geopolitics, and then, look at how ready the UK actually is. We'll wrap up with a couple of possible ways it could play out.
Okay, so to really get where Britain stands now, we need to rewind a bit. Back to Trump's first term, 2017 to 2021. That whole period was dominated by his America First idea, right? Which meant tariffs, hitting things like steel, aluminum, and putting a lot of pressure on, traditional alliances.
Yeah.
And UK definitely felt that, got hit with those 25% tariffs on metal. But interestingly, they kind of dodged the worst of it, didn't they? Got some clever carve-outs. What stood out to you from that first round?
Well, what's fascinating there, building on your point, is just how well the UK navigated it. I mean, despite this big America First push, Britain actually landed the lowest possible reciprocal rate, just 10%.
Just 10%.
Yeah, they managed to avoid the much tougher penalties others got hit with. And this early success, getting those carve-outs, it wasn't just some minor detail. It really showed the UK's strategic flexibility, maybe even a kind of hidden advantage after Brexit, positioning them differently, arguably better than their EU neighbors right from the get-go.
That really does set the scene. Okay, so now let's jump forward. Hypothetically, January 2025, maybe a second term. We'd likely see that protectionist push again, right? Maybe a 10% blanket tariff on most imports. And then these reciprocal duties for countries selling more to the U.S. than they buy.
That's the idea. Like, if you have a trade surplus with us, you pay more.
A pretty broad brush.
And you can see how that early navigation continued into this hypothetical second term. That May 2025 UK-US deal, the economic prosperity deal, that was huge.
Right.
It saw tariffs on UK cars, steel, aluminum slashed from 25% down to 10%, plus those special exemptions for aerospace. It was clearly a bit of give and take.
So the UK gave ground on its digital services tax, relaxed some import rules.
Exactly, a negotiated outcome.
Okay, so with that history sort of framing things, let's pivot. What are the immediate implications for the UK now? Starting with, obviously trade and tariffs. Yeah, the baseline is key here. Trump seems to have locked in 10% tariffs on UK goods. Now, for you listening, this isn't just a random number. It fundamentally changes the game for British products in the US. I mean, think about it. A British car, or maybe a pharmaceutical good, suddenly has this built-in price advantage over one from the EU, which is facing 20%, or China paying, 34%?
That's a massive difference.
It's a direct result of their specific diplomatic legwork.
Absolutely. And it really shows the UK's leverage in those talks, because while 10% is the baseline, we've already seen those specific carve-outs, autos, metals, aerospace. Now, the US is well known for sudden threats in talks, right?
Definitely. Unpredictable.
So Britain's top job is going to be holding on to those carve-outs and ideally expanding them. Think beef, pharma, again, digital services. It's a constant diplomatic effort. But does that unique position create maybe new vulnerabilities? Maybe with other trading partners?
That's a really interesting question. Let's shift slightly to the economic and political fallout. It's fascinating looking at what UK businesses think. About two-thirds, 66%, actually reckon U.S. tariffs won't hit them directly.
Really? That high?
Yeah, but then nearly 30% are worried. Lower sales, less investment. So it's a real mixed bag. Optimism versus concern. And the Bank of England has definitely weighed in too, hasn't it? Flagging global trade disruption as a risk to UK financial stability. They're keeping a close eye.
That mixed view from businesses is interesting, especially when you link it to the bigger geopolitical stuff. If we connect it all up, Trump's skepticism about NATO, his focus on doing things alone, it's really strained the special relationship, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
It raises big questions about, transatlantic defense ties weakening. And this could mean London really has to rethink things, maybe collaborate much more with the EU, build up its own defenses if U.S. support seems less certain. So while some businesses might feel okay economically, the geopolitical waves could force a much bigger strategic change for the UK overall.
And of course, this whole deep dive kind of hangs on this one question: Trump's re-election chances. Look, anything can happen, but right now, most forecasts give him a bit of an edge over Biden for 2025.
Yeah.
Though, the Electoral College always makes it tricky.
Always.
And we can't ignore the legal issues. He's still tangled up in court cases that could definitely affect his run. But fundamentally, his connection with his core voters, it's incredibly strong. Polls show something like 90% of his party is right behind him. It's a very solid base.
It is.
Okay, so let's get specific on trade effects. Examples, comparisons. Like we said, the UK seems to have done better than the EU, mostly avoiding those really high 20–50% reciprocal tariffs hitting EU producers.
Which is a key differentiator.
Absolutely. So sector examples for you. Steel and aluminum, tariffs down from 25 to 10%. That's a big relief for UK metal firms. Cars. The tariff on 100,000 UK cars cut from 25 to 10. Good, but limited, right? Anything over that still faces duties.
So helpful, but not a total free pass.
Exactly. And then, crucially, pharma and aerospace got special carve-outs. That's minimized the disruption in those really important sectors.
And looking at the bigger picture, economists, both in Oxford and Brussels, seem to think Europe overall, including the UK, will probably see a limited hit from Trump's tariffs. Manageable is the word often used. But yeah, still worrying for certain areas like cars and machinery. It's nuanced, isn't it? The headline figure might hide some real pain in specific industries.
So the big question then, is the UK actually ready for this potential storm, or are they just kind of hoping for the best? When we talk preparedness, policy agility seems key. We've seen the Starmer government talking to Washington, working hard on those carve-outs, tweaking domestic stuff like the digital tax, all to keep that market access.
Yeah.
That proactive approach seems vital.
It really does. And that agility seems backed up by some domestic resilience. The Bank of England, the government, they've done stress tests. The findings suggest UK firms, banks, they are adaptable. But, it's not all rosy, fragile supply chains. That's still a worry. Needs constant focus. And beyond just economics, there's that strategic pivot, too. The UK strengthening defense links with the EU, taking a more independent security stance if the US focus keeps drifting. It kind of suggests they know they can't just rely on this special relationship like maybe they used to.
That makes total sense. Okay, so given all these moving parts, let's look ahead. Maybe lay out two possible scenarios for you to think about, because things rarely go down just one single path.
Good idea.
Okay, first, Scenario A, tariff turbulence continues. So in this version, Trump pushes ahead with reciprocal tariffs, really targeting other countries. The UK hangs on to its carve-outs, but still takes a small hit to GDP, maybe 0.1 to 0.3%. What's interesting here is how companies might react. Diversify supply chains, shift investment, some might even relocate, seeing an opportunity where others face higher tariffs. A real strategic shuffle.
Right, finding the gaps.
Then there's Scenario B, tempers. Cool. Deals expand. So here, maybe negotiations continue, the UK-US deal gets bigger, covering more sectors, digital farming, services. A deeper deal could offset most remaining tariffs, really strengthen the ties. But the catch is, it might mean the UK has to give ground on its own standards, maybe food safety, or digital rules.
Concessions needed.
Exactly. But in this scenario, the UK would probably end up looking pretty good, definitely ahead of its European neighbors.
And you should really think about the trade-offs in both those scenarios. They really underline that tricky balancing act for the UK government trying to get economic benefits while protecting its own rules and independence.
So boiling all this down, what does it actually mean for you? Let's try and summarize the bottom line from all these sources. Geopolitically, a second Trump term looks like friction. Tariffs, yes, but also questions about NATO's future. How ready the UK is really depends on its negotiating skill and its ability to build stronger ties, both in Europe and globally.
Diplomatic skill is crucial.
Absolutely. Economically, Britain seems better placed than many others. Those 10% tariffs, yeah, they hurt, but they seem survivable. Still, some industries are definitely vulnerable to just the ongoing uncertainty.
Uncertainty is the killer sometimes.
There really is. And finally, domestic resilience. That really counts. The Bank of England, the government, they're watching, they're stress testing. But companies that rely heavily on U.S. trade, they absolutely need backup plans, solid contingency planning.
No question.
So my final take for you is this. Yes, Britain looks well prepared, relatively speaking, for this landscape, but it's definitely not untouchable. The UK has those carve-outs, seems to have decent traction in negotiations, but that persistent uncertainty, it will put pressure on growth, on strategic decisions, agility, smart diplomacy, and just being genuinely open to adapting trade patterns. Those will be absolutely vital.
And maybe building on that, here's something for you to mull over. Given these potential shifts, in global alliances, trade flows, what completely new opportunities or maybe challenges might pop up for countries that can adapt really quickly? And what does all this mean for, well, long-term economic stability worldwide? Something to think about.
Thanks for watching the video.
We'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to share them in the comments below. If there's a specific topic you'd like us to cover next time, do let us know.
Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. And if you found this one helpful, make sure to share it with others too.
See you in the next video.